Hello everyone, and welcome to the Vision of Escaflowne Retrospective conclusion. For real this time. Like all other conclusion videos, this one will serve as a neat little capstone for the retrospective, in which I do a few housekeeping things and share my final thoughts on the series, and thank you the viewer of course. Let's get into things. Now usually in these videos, I start by touching on the tertiary cast, and themes that I didn't dedicate a few video to. However, since the tertiary cast got their own video, I will just instead briefly go over a few of the themes and cut content from this retrospective. Now the central theme of the series, as mentioned ad nauseum by this point, is defying the idea of an unchangeable fate and instead making your own. There are a few other themes that were worked into the series though, however, these themes are just kind of generic and obvious, things like war is bad and family is important. And since these themes are very general and not handled particularly gracefully or notably by the series, on occasion I would go as far to say clunkily, I didn't make videos on them as I felt that would be redundant and or unnecessary. In addition, the Fate video itself is sort of an amalgamation of ideas I had jotted down, including the ideas of predicting versus making the future, self-discovery, and moving on. I'd also like to say that there are other videos covering these topics made by people who are not me, and we should appreciate the time that they've put into them and give them a watch as well. While my ideas for the Fate video were not all the same, they were similar enough to lump them together, and since their topics have been mentioned in other videos, I didn't want to beat a dead horse too much. I also briefly considered making a video about the standalone movie. However, since that production is so alien to the source material, and honestly I didn't want to taint the fun energy of this series with a much darker movie, I decided to leave it alone for now, and probably come back to it at a later point, as a nice standalone feature. And that just about does it for the cut content section of this conclusion. Now to the best part, my final thoughts on the Vision of Escaflowne. Vision of Escaflowne surpassed all expectations I initially had of it. Just looking at the box and briefly glancing at a Wikipedia page about it, I expected, a competent, probably sanitized, generic adventure with a little bit of magic and theming, maybe an action scene, and generic positive, I guess. That's what I expected. I expected a generic family production, basically. What I got instead was an excellent series of episodes starring excellently written characters, real stakes, and deep themes applicable to both the cast and ourselves. In fact, while I understand Escaflowne is sometimes incorrectly dismissed as a chick flick because it stars a young woman, of all the series I've reviewed so far, with possibly the exception of Trigun or Samurai 7, I think the Vision of Escaflowne has the most broad appeal of any. The Big O is divisive due to its ending, Ergo Proxy is niche by default due to its philosophical overtones, and Blue Gender of course has a lot of gory, mature content. These are shows that while I love, may not be for everyone. Everyone has different tastes. But I feel that Escaflowne is for everyone. It has great characters, it has a solid plot with high stakes, it has an enchanted setting, it has a smattering of amazing action scenes, it has romance, it has intrigue, it has an amazing soundtrack, and it has themes that hit close to home. And it manages to balance all of these very well. I'd like to point out that having all of these things alone is not necessarily an instant recipe for a perfect production. Each element must also be handled well in order to balance out and not overwhelm any other element, and Escaflowne does this masterfully. I think that's what sticks out the most to me, is how amazingly balanced the series is, of just how well-rounded it is. A good message, told by an amazing cast, in a wonderful setting, will automatically make for a great story. But, by managing to balance so many disparate components so expertly, they manage to craft a story which can have appeal to almost anyone. It's almost universal, if not universal. I want to just take a second here to really point out that Hitomi herself is a great protagonist and really shows that the writers knew what they were doing. I love the idea of the protagonist not necessarily being a combatant. It seems a little weird at first, but it does make the show so much more relatable. None of us are probably mech pilots in real life, and none of us are probably super skilled sword warriors. However, the main character of this show isn't either, and it shows that all of us can make our own destiny. It shows that all of us have agency and that we need to use it to make the best possible future for ourselves. I love the fact that Hitomi doesn't fight, actually. I've seen comments on some of my video about her saying that's what makes her so inspiring, that she is just like us, and that she still has the ability to change the future for the better. She doesn't fight, but she's still vital to the plot, and likable and relatable. And of course the rest of the cast is quite fleshed out too, and I'm amazed by how much they are so. While many of these characters could have simply been archetype tropes, they're not. They could have just used generic cold Falcon, but no, he's an empathetic man struggling with his buried empathy. They could have just used a crazy generic warlord, but instead the Landau is a mentally scarred young person who's trying to deal with a crap ton of trauma. They could have had generic knight in shining armor, but Alan's instead a deconstruction of what a knight really is and whether or not that actually affects who you are as a person. Vaughn could have just been generic sit-back prince, but instead he's a very active member of the cast who is by no means perfect. Malerna could have just been the damsel in distress, but she's a princess who actively tries to make her own future. And Dryden could have just been some merchant who doesn't care about anything but money, but he loves everything else at the expense of money. Escaflowne's writing is just so masterful, and its cast really adds to the universal appeal of the series, as they're simple enough in concept, as they're simple enough to understand and relate to, but fleshed out enough and written in a way that contradicts tropes to the point where they're still very interesting and engaging. Yes, there are productions with more action, or more romance, or more philosophical musings, or more characters written to fit certain roles, but Escaflowne and its cast and its soundtrack and just all of its elements have a little bit of something for everyone. And this masterful combination of so many different and interesting elements just establish Escaflowne as a truly, truly great, obscure anime memory. I cannot recommend this series enough. Finally, time for some housekeeping stuff. This retrospective sure took a while. I'm working a different job now, but it was definitely fun making in my downtime. I want to say thanks to all of those, of course, who watch my videos and who take time to comment and make show suggestions. In fact, Escaflowne was a viewer suggestion, and I'm grateful to be able to find and explore such obscure gems with the help of viewers and subscribers. Thanks to all those who have subscribed, by the way, and as always, the poll for the next retrospective series will be up soon. I will let that stew for a while, though, to allow for a DVD to come in the mail. And in the meantime, I will look forward to working on a few one-off productions. I haven't made any in a while, and I have had a few video ideas stewing around for a bit that I want to explore before getting back into any longer retrospectives. Again, I thank everyone for subscribing and who enjoys these little videos. This is just a neat little hobby that I have, and it's just so cool seeing people who love all these other series that many don't even know about or hear about anymore. I think it's just so great exploring such obscure little gems. For now, though, I think I'm gonna call it. Once again, thank you to everyone for watching, thank you to everyone who's subscribed, and thanks for joining me as we explore some great, obscure anime memories.